Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with my friend Olivia Bahrami, the founder of the RFP House. What's up, Olivia?
Hey Ben, hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's so good to see you.
Likewise.
We've been friends for a long time. I've watched kind of your journey through global mobility. I'm a really big fan of what you're doing now. I think it's
Thank
so
you.
important what you're doing, and I'm really excited to kind of show people what the RFP House is all about. And I'm just really thrilled to kind of hear how your journey kind of got you here and all that. So I'm excited to catch up with you today.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here, and likewise, it's just really honored and blessed to be here with you. I know that's your line, really honored and blessed, right? I
Yeah.
picked up on that, and I love that, and I apply it to my day to day. So I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and just real quick on that topic, and shout out to everybody. Get in the comments. I want to know who you are, where you are, what your thoughts are on RFPs and proposal writing and the whole acquisition process. So tap into the comments there, and we'll give you a shout out. I see Christian coming in, but yeah, I say blessed and honored because I am. I'm like I don't know
Mhm.
how I got here. Honestly, sometimes I'm like I don't know why I got the opportunity to do this. It's such a cool opportunity to have Love and Reload and get a chance to talk to really cool entrepreneurs and thought leaders, like yourself, and to be able to have this cool audience out here that tunes in and watches it, and the love that comes from it is just really cool. So it does feel like an honor. And sometimes when I don't want to get out of bed and do it, and I don't want to put a nice shirt on and get my hair did, I was like I gotta. It's an honor to have this opportunity. So trying to
Yeah.
honor the opportunity. We got people checking in here. Sarah Bowler checking in. Olivia, so great to see you in action.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for tuning in.
Very cool. And let's see, Farrell Elliott can't wait. Anything to streamline and simplify the RFP process is worth learning about. Farrell, what is the part of the RFP process that you hate the most? This is our operator. We're normally a positive show, okay? But today we can just rag on these RFPs, okay? Because I think we all hate them equally, all right? We're all on the same page here. Farrell, what is your least favorite part? Dana Cashone, what's up? Hi, Olivia and Ben. This is so crazy because my wife's name is Olivia. So when somebody says hi,
I know.
Olivia and
You
Ben,
mentioned
and
this
I'm
long
like,
time
where?
ago.
Where? I'm like, this kind of freaks me out a little bit. Shout out from New Jersey. What's up, Dana? What's your least favorite part of the RFP process or any memorable stories you want to share? Lynn Madison. Hi, Ben and Olivia checking in from Washington, D.C. What's up, Lynn? I want to know what are your thoughts on proposal writing and the RFP process. Get in the comments here. Christian checking in from Orange County. Which Orange County? There's like 8 million Orange counties. Is it Orlando? Is it Southern California? Is it New Jersey? Is it New York? I need more information. Farrell says, too many redundant questions.
Oh my
Olivia, is
gosh.
this true? There's too
Oh my
many
gosh.
redundant questions?
I'm laughing because this is so true. Yes, there's in more cases than not, RFPs feature the same questions over and over again. And sometimes, we have either um, procurement driven RFPs that are issued by clients, and they use the same questionnaire over and over again. They don't review the questions to make sure that they make sense and that they're in alignment with their policies. So that makes it frustrating. It makes it redundant. It makes it um, administrative heavy for the proposal team to handle. So yes, I see that a lot. Or sometimes certain clients will use the same consultant who uses the same questions over and over again. And for example, they'll say, oh, this is a domestic program or a cross-border program, but it's really international. And they ask all sorts of questions that just don't make sense, that are not applicable. And it's our job to kind of work through that and ask the clarifying questions to make sure that we understand how we're going to bid on the work. So, yeah.
Really good point here. You brought up a lot of good points. We got more. Get in the comments here. I want to hear your thoughts. What is the worst part of RFPs? I think, sometimes we can all bond together over our shared traumas. So that's what we're just doing here
Yes.
on the show here. So Christian says, I'm in Cali next to Disneyland. What's up? Dana says, the waiting and the
Oh,
waiting. Oh, and the waiting to hear. Did I mention the waiting?
That's another good point, Dana. RFPs will always feature a little timetable with different milestones, key dates, and so on. And a lot of times you'll see the date by which a client will make their choice. They will announce which RMC or service provider they've picked. That I look at that as really a tentative date because a lot of times they don't stick to it. They just, they'll say, I don't know, October 2024. But it can really vary. And even when you follow up, like the sales or business development person will follow up and say, we're checking in to see, have you had a chance to review our responses? Have you done your evaluation? And sometimes it'll be crickets, and other times it'll be months before you find out. And other times, which is kind of the exception, not the case, is that they'll have the decision on time, which is lovely because it's good for your back.
I gotta ask you, how come I have to turn the RFP in by August 15th, no later than 4 p.m. Eastern,
Yep.
and they don't have to abide by the dates that they have to give you the answer? I should turn my bid in. Can I turn my bid in and say, listen, it's going to be $100 if you award the business by August 15th. It's it's $105 if you award it by September 1st. It's $200 if you award it in November. And, don't even call me if it's after.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think this is what we talked about before too, Ben, is I don't think, and this is just a general comment, I'm not calling out anyone specifically, but I think sometimes corporates have more leeway than the service providers or the RMCs. So the RMCs and the service providers, they're very diligent about getting the work done, being on time, being compliant, answering all the questions, completing all the appendices. But then sometimes I believe the corporates have the upper hand here. They really do, because they can say, well, we need more time, or we haven't made a decision, or so I think it's certainly unfair in some situations because you want to just find out. And even if they need more time to evaluate the RFPs, that's cool, but just communicate that they need more time so that okay, they haven't forgotten about us. It's coming. We just need to be a little bit more patient.
Yeah, totally. Get in the comments. I want to know from you, what is your least favorite part of the RFP process? We actually had topics and things we were going to talk about, and we're going to get to all those. But before we do, I got to prioritize the audience here, okay? It's all about the audience. So we're going to take your questions and your comments first here. Hit that like button, get in the comments, check in here. We got people that are just venting. It's amazing. Francisco says, checking in from Austin. What's up, Francisco? Jilly and Guz, the Jilly dogs in the house from Glomo HQ. What's up, dogs? All right, here we go. Sarah Bowler says, what about the joy of character restrictions that ask you a 3-part question and you get to respond with the length of a tweet?
This is really funny. So in preparation for the show, because I'm a notes kind of gal, I'm all about notes. I made a bunch of notes on here. And one of them, I don't know if you can see at the bottom, it says 250 characters or words, responses. So it's on here. And Sarah, I feel your pain through and through. And I think...
How do you do that? Do you start including pictures? Like what am I?
I know. Yeah, it's so difficult. And I think they've started doing this. And I see this as a trend in the RFP space where corporates, in an effort, and their procurement teams, in an effort to get concise responses, they've now taken it upon themselves to require that we adhere to this 250 word character limit or word limit. And that's because I think they've seen over the years that RMCs and service providers can be very lengthy and verbose in their responses. And yeah, I've seen it as well. I see it to this day. So I think they've taken it upon themselves to kind of impose this restriction in an effort to make it short and sweet. Clear. I like to call it. I go by the three C's: clear, concise, compelling. That's kind of my philosophy around.
That's beautiful.
Proposal responses. So yeah, it's tough, and it's an exercise in not only what you know in your knowledge, but knowing how to frame the response in such a way that it answers the question and it's within that character limitation. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, clear, concise, and compelling, that's what we all strive for, right? And Sarah's, she loves that you had that noted. Of course you did. This is great. This is wonderful. Yeah, they're just going to use AI to read them all anyway, aren't they? I mean, we're going to talk about AI too.
Yes. Yeah.
We're going to talk about, I think it's going to be, one of these days, it's like, are we going to be having AI write and AI review and then AI decide? And then at some point, it's like, what, who's in charge here? Anyway, we'll get to that. Christian says, it's imagine if you're a kid and Santa's visit is being postponed
Ooh,
and postponed and postponed until it's summer.
ooh, that's rough. That's
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you get a sled and it's June, and you're like, oh, thanks, Santa. Appreciate it. Thanks for that. Get in the comments. I want to know what your thoughts are. What are the worst parts about RFPs? Rob Morehouse says, lack of feedback despite expecting a huge amount of info.
Yeah, that's a hard one. And I know sometimes post RFP, some clients will freely, participate in a debrief to give you some information as takeaways, but others won't. And even if you request to have a session to, note some takeaways from the RFP process, they just simply will say, we decline or whatever. So that's difficult because there's always a learning opportunity in every RFP that you do, whether it's one that you lose or win. And any feedback that we can get from our clients or prospects is very valuable because it helps us see things from a different perspective. It helps us consider things that maybe we haven't before. And it also helps us confirm some of the things that we're doing well. So I'm a huge advocate for, post RFP submission, debriefs, feedback, whether it's positive or constructive. And I wish it would happen more often, to be honest.
You mentioned they may decline to provide additional information or feedback. Can we, as respondents, is there ever a situation where it's acceptable to decline to answer certain questions or participate in certain portions of
Yeah,
the RFP?
that's a good question. And it's a good question because we're flipping the script a little bit. We're looking at it from a different lens, right? I would say no. And the reason why I say that is because one of the things that we are being scored on is our ability to comply. And our ability to comply means to answer the question fully, to answer the question in a strategic and thoughtful manner. And if we want to score the highest points based on their little, as I said, the timetable with the evaluation criteria of how they score each section, it's incumbent upon us as those that are bidding on the opportunity to answer the questions as best as possible, because it is in our own best interest to do that, to make it to the next stage, which is typically the short list or best and final presentations. And although that happens most of the time, there are instances that I've seen that RMCs or service providers win business straight from the RFP itself. And that is very compelling because it really shows you, wow, this company did a great job in covering everything that I've asked them for. They followed all the instructions. They stayed within that character limit or the font color or size and all that, which we see a lot of as well. So I would say no, only because then we will not get the results that we're looking for.
Yeah, and get in the comments here. I want to hear your thoughts here. We got some great stuff coming in here. Jason Hall checking in from USI Law. What's up, Jay Hall? Super interesting because I work with like service providers, whether it be movers or immigration law firms or corporate housing companies or whatever. And sometimes they're sent an RFP, a request for proposal, for anybody that doesn't understand the acronym, that might be for relocation services. And it might be very household goods heavy,
Yes.
down to rates and where your locations, and it gets really into household goods. But then it also like gloms on something about destination services or managing other aspects of the relocation process. And you're like, this is 80% household goods, but 20% of it is RMC work or something else.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you do in a situation like that if you're a household goods provider?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I've seen done is RMCs will typically partner with other household goods providers. So if they have, internal supply chain management teams that manage a specific network of providers, like household goods providers, destination services providers, title, right? Like all of these different providers that are out there in mobility, they will usually partner with them and say, hey, I received this RFP. 80% of it is relo services, but we need to be able to partner with one of the RMCs in order to deliver this work, because a household goods provider or van line, they can only provide for their area of expertise, which is household goods, but they can't deliver on the other work without the partnership of an RMC. So sometimes you'll see that they go to bid together. So they'll have, in one section, it'll be the RMC's responses, and the other section, which is just household goods, it's the household goods provider with all of their responses. But we need to take it a step further and show the integration and show how that integration works, and what is the value of partnering with really two providers, if you think about it, an RMC and a household goods provider.
Yeah, really, really interesting. People are loving the idea of debriefs. I mean, that's like asking for feedback when you don't get a job, right? I mean, how likely are people to really want to give that feedback? But Rob makes a good point. He says that a prospect's lack of preparedness to provide feedback reduces our interest in bidding next time. But it's hard to say no to an RFP. You get invited to an RFP. You know, is it ever appropriate for a business to make the decision not to participate in an RFP process?
Oh yeah, and that's why I live by this philosophy, and I advise anyone that I work with that not every opportunity is a good opportunity. I know it's very appealing, right? When you see an opportunity come up and you say, hey, you know, we have this opportunity, we should bid on it. But should we really? Like, we need to look at it from different lenses. The revenue part is one thing. Can we meet the requirements is another thing. Do we have the staff? Do we have the regional model to support? Should we be doing this? Is this profitable? Is this a type of client that we can work with? There's also a thing of a fit. Is this a good fit for your organization? Maybe not.
Describe when you say fit, describe that fit. Like, what goes in that? Because I think we talk about fit, and I think it's thrown around.
Yeah.
Like, what does it really mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a few things. Corporate philosophies, the way in which they see that philosophy of like, are your values aligned with that client? Are the missions similar? Are you able to deliver what they're looking for? Do you share the same vision on your ESG principles, sustainability? Like, there's many factors that come into that, and it's different from RFP to RFP and from client to client, really. Is it a client out of the UK that needs on the ground support? And if you're a US based company but don't have presence in the UK, that might not be a good fit, right? So there's many things to consider, and there's no right or wrong answer by any means, but it really does vary from client to client, from industry to industry. At least that's what I've seen in my experience.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful too, if you as a service provider of any type have a client persona in mind with very specific criteria, you know, maybe up to a dozen different criteria that you look for. And you can actually, I mean, we get scored as providers when we respond to these RFPs, but we can score our prospects by these criteria and say, you know, how many of these boxes do they check? You know, if they check 12 out of 12, okay, obviously that's a home run. That thing probably sells itself, to be honest with you. If they're 10 out of 12, okay, still probably pretty good. If they're only 6 out of 12, you probably want to question, like, is this somebody we're really aligned to serve? So I would do a lot of work around client persona in order to
know what that's called in marketing terms, Ben? That's called a buyer profile. So buyer profile is a set of indicators, buying habits, that you can generate as part of that buyer profile or persona, to your point. So, and that's actually very helpful as part of a marketing exercise to see, who can I appeal to? Who do I want to sell my services to? Who do I want to get in front of? So love that point on buyer personas.
Yeah, we're gonna take a couple more questions, and I want to get into Olivia's journey and how she kind of got here and why she chose to really focus on the global mobility industry. What's up, Jack Jampel? We got Jumpin' Jack in the house.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah, hit that like button, y'all. Get in there. Appreciate you, Jack. Jack, what do you think? You know what, Jack always likes to flip the coin on me here a little bit, okay? He's like a Batman villain, you know, he's standing there in the corner flipping that coin. Jack, tell me why I'm wrong. We are ragging on RFPs right now. Am I wrong? Am I crazy? Okay, are RFPs actually amazing things and I've just got it all backwards like I sometimes do? Get in there, let me know. Farrell says, another frustration, dedication to complete an RFP when it is clear that the goal is just to satisfy the requirement to put out the RFP, but no real desire to make a change.
Yeah, oof. That's sometimes called a client will go out to RFP every 2, 3, 5 years. And that, I look at that as pricing exercises. They're just testing the market. They want to see what's out there, and they're not really interested in learning about their competitors. They're just doing it because they have to. And I see that happen a lot on the procurement side, where they have to do their due diligence. They got to go out every 3 to 5 years just to kind of like check that box that it's done. And yes, I fully agree. It is very frustrating because a lot of work goes into these projects. And when you know there's no real shot at it, it becomes that much more challenging.
Do they take that pricing data that they amass through the RFP process and go back to their incumbent and leverage that to then try to
Sometimes.
get the price down?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they can use that as leverage to say, okay, here are some pricing that I received back from some of your competitors. Show me what you can do better as we look to potentially extend our partnership.
I've got two questions here. One, if they never intended to change, should you as an incumbent even entertain that conversation? Or should you stand on business and say, listen, I've been providing you amazing service for 5-10 years. You know we're amazing. And yes, we're 10% more expensive, but that's the cost of delivering an amazing service.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for.
Yep.
Should they take that approach, or should they capitulate and say, okay, fine, we can sharpen the pencil?
Yeah, I think it really depends. I think, one of the things that they need to consider is what is the cost of implementation and the transition, not the cost itself, but the actual cost of the inconvenience, the stress, the stakeholder collaboration and getting everybody involved. So I think incumbents need to play it from that lens as well. And also, this is one thing I learned over the years, Ben. It's harder to keep existing business than win new business. And it's harder because you need to provide a value proposition that is unlike no other. And you really got to justify yourself as an RMC or service provider to say, here's why we think you should stick with us. Here are all the reasons why. Here are the satisfaction survey results. Here are some of the projects that we've helped you with. Here are the number of people we've moved. Here are the VIPs we've moved. So it has to be very compelling, and that's not easy to do. So I think a lot of pressure is found on those incumbents every single time that they go out to, as I call it, retender or rebid.
Super interesting. I got to think, my follow-up question to this is, if I know that this prospect is going out to bid simply as a pricing exercise against, the incumbent, my competitor, why wouldn't I just come in and crazy lowball it? Just saying, okay, I know they're just going to take my pricing back over to the competitor and ask them to me to it. Yeah. Why not just come in and crazy lowball it, and just as an agent of chaos, just to create havoc in the marketplace and give my competitor a bad day, right? I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but that's just the way I'm thinking. Turn it around on them.
Yeah, absolutely. You can try it. It's a strategy. If you're willing to try it, you also have to be willing to take the risk and accept the outcomes of that risk, because it's not a sure strategy. It might backfire, but at the same time, if you're willing to do that, and let's say, for example, maybe that account is not very profitable and you're okay with kind of losing it, or it's one of those clients that are extremely demanding and it's hard to service them or to work with them, that's another thing you got to consider.
Yeah. I think it'd be really interesting. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on this. Crazy. Yeah. Farrell says, then your bluff gets called and you make no money.
It's possible.
Yeah, but you weren't going to get the business anyway. So you could just decline it at that point. You could get it, and then they could come to you and say, okay, congratulations, you win. And you'd be like, nah, I'm good. Because you're filling out an RFP is not a commitment to actually accept the business. So you still have a contract you have to sign. Anyway, I'm just curious. Abigail saying a little late to the call, but already loving this call. Always learning something new on your calls. Thanks for keeping us up to date on so many avenues of mobility. Yeah, you're welcome, Abigail. Appreciate you coming on. Richard from London Town, late to dinner, jumping on. Yeah, what's for dinner? I got to know, Richard. What's for dinner? Sounds really exciting new venture, and wishing massive success, Olivia.
Thank you.
Olivia, where in the world are you right now? We know Richard's in London. Where are you?
Yes, so I'm in Canada. I'm 20 minutes west of Toronto. And I've lived here for the last 28 years. Prior to that, I was born and raised in Romania. So I have my own personal experience with relocation with my family. We immigrated to Canada in 1996 when I was 10 years old, and I've been here ever since.
Love it. And I want to get your full story here. We're going to take two more comments, and then I'm going to get Olivia's full story here. Jack says RFPs are just a part of the mobility process. Supplier who wins the business love the process. The ones who don't will pick apart the RFP process. It is a problem. But Jack, you don't change suppliers often. I mean, so I don't, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are about RFPs, or is it about, hugs and handshakes, trust, getting to know people and feeling comfortable with that supplier. Richard says, one thing I would like to ask, referring to service departments, RFPs, is whether you have noticed property accreditation and certifications as a requirement. How important are accreditation and certifications?
Yeah, so I don't typically work very often on serviced apartments, so
Yeah,
I
like
need to
temp
be open
housing,
and honest
corporate
about that.
housing. Yeah.
But what I've seen before, sometimes they ask for it, but not as much as they ask for accreditation or certifications of an RMC. So they'll ask, what sort of associations or bodies, are you part of? So a lot of questions of those come up. But as it pertains specifically, because that is quite specific on service departments, I don't see that at least in my experience, I haven't seen that very often. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. It's just from my own experience. I didn't see that very, very often in
Do you
our.
see a lot of ISO stuff?
Yes, but typically from IT specific clients will have very detailed DDQs, due diligence questionnaires. So they'll ask, about everything and anything pertaining to our IT systems, um, uh, different policies, procedures. If we are accredited with ISO, how do we keep client and relocating employee data confidential? So that sort of information. But aside from that, I don't see very much on ISO. I see more on around, again, accreditations and mobility kind of cred, as I like to call it, as it pertains to the certification process and associations that they're part of.
For sure, for sure. Hit that like button, get in the comments, put your questions in there. We'll get to them at the end. I want to ask you, Olivia, I've known you for a while. I've been paying attention to your journey. How did you end up creating the RFP house and why?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start off by saying that before I was gone from the global mobility industry for a couple of years, I had worked for a global financial services organization, and that was an amazing opportunity. I was able to really develop my leadership skills and experience a different industry that I had not been a part of, and that journey was great. And at the same time, I just knew that I wanted to come back to mobility because I love the industry, I love the people, I love the work, and the value proposition of what it means to operate in mobility. And also the one thing that I've realized about myself through a lot of growth and self-reflection and maturity and reflection is that I have this entrepreneurial bone in me. There's something in me that just wants more for myself, and it's something that I know I can provide value for. And I couldn't silence that voice until I took action.
Yeah.
And I think this might be something to do with my own parents because in Romania, they were both entrepreneurs. So I think some of that entrepreneurial spirit is thanks to my parents. And it's just the way I see myself. And I think it's important to be true and authentic to who you are and recognize that if you want to do something and you know you can do it well and offer this value and knowledge and experience by doing this kind of work, you need to listen to that voice. And until you listen to that voice, it's going to continue being there. At least that was my own experience. So in very kind of short, in a short sort of format, that's how I returned to mobility and how I got into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it's not
I
an
love
easy
that.
journey. I know you're an entrepreneur and there's ups and downs. There's a lot of ambiguity and a lack of prediction of what's going to happen. But I think that if you give it your best, then you can feel content and happy with your decision. And yeah, that's how I came back to mobility and to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love it. I know, I really identify with what you said about you had that kind of voice inside you, and you felt like if you didn't do something about it, it was just going to be there, kind of nagging at you. And so many folks have that voice in them, whether it's starting their own business or doing something else or pursuing a passion or something like that. But it takes tremendous courage to be able to do
Oof,
it,
that's a good one.
And
Yeah.
Olivia, I know you have a family. I mean, I know it's like it's not just us out here. It's like it'd be different if I'm 22 years old, I'm just bopping around, and I could always just go sleep on the couch somewhere, right? It's just me,
Exactly.
But it's kind of funny because it's like easy to do in your 20s. The problem is you don't know anything in your 20s. You don't have any skills, right? Like you're
Yeah.
not a mobility expert. You're not a professional proposal. I don't know what you wanted to
Right.
do when you were 22, but I was working in a call center, with an English degree,
Yeah.
and I hadn't even graduated college yet. It took me a while to finish up. So, it's kind of a paradox where you have a lot of flexibility and opportunity to kind of chase crazy dreams when you're in your 20s, but you don't have anything to like,
Exactly.
you see these founders that are in their 20s and they want to go fix a problem that sometimes doesn't even exist. So yeah, it's
It's
cool.
such a good point because you're right, Ben. I think it takes a lot of courage, which sometimes is not easy to make that step. And I also left a job that was very securing, like right. So
Yeah.
to walk away from something that offers you so much in pursuit of something else, my gosh, it does take a lot of courage, and you have to take the good with the bad. Like it again, going back to that whole thing of risk, in order to um, pursue what it is that you want to do, you have to be okay with taking the risk. And as you said, like I have a family, I have a husband, I have a young daughter. So it's not just like, hey, I'm just gonna do my own thing because I don't have anyone to sort of answer to. That's not the case at all. So I totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, so cool. So I want to. Richard's crazy. I heard something now. You're like, Richard, go eat dinner, Richard. Okay, go eat dinner. Jack saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it, unless of course it's a company requirement to do an RFP every number
Yeah.
of years. Yeah, no, I feel you, buddy. People are saying ISO is going to be more the norm
Mm,
sooner than later, once the government mandates it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ISO standards, so I'm kind of curious which one
true.
you
Yeah.
think is going to be mandated. Richard saying 31030 is gaining traction in service department general business. Tell me what that means. Don't even know.
Hmm.
Tandra from Illinois. What's up, Tandra?
Hmm.
Good to see you out there. Hit that like button, get in the comments, let us know what you think here. But now tell me about the concept for RFP House, particularly. Why did you feel like this was a gap in the market
Yeah.
that really you were
Yeah.
well positioned to fill?
Yeah, so first I'll start off by saying that I've been doing RFPs in individual contributor and senior leadership roles for 15 years. So I know the RFP process in and out. But as it pertains to mobility specifically, there's nobody doing this kind of work. There's no one out there that is offering this kind of service to as a contractor to RMCs and service providers. And there are people in the industry that work for RMCs or service providers, and they respond to RFPs, right? There are those people, so I want to make sure I acknowledge them. But as it pertains to an organization or a firm, I like to look at the RFP House as a small woman-owned boutique firm that does this day in and day out. That is my bread and butter, and that's how I've positioned the RFP House because of the experience that I bring, the knowledge and industry experience within mobility. I think is a big value proposition, and I'm able. And here's where I think I need to acknowledge that by doing RFPs in mobility, I'm in a place of privilege to see what other RMCs are doing without commenting to one another what they're doing, and also what service providers are doing. So I'm able to bring all of this knowledge, reflect on it, and determine how we can approach it in the best way possible for each client. So I think it's interesting because it's a very unique, it's a very niche area. First of all, to be able to do RFPs, it is quite a niche skill set that isn't for everybody, God knows, because it can be very stressful and overwhelming, and you need to be a certain kind of style of person to be able to do it well. But to do it in mobility specifically, it's like a niche of a niche. So I realize that there's this gap really in the industry that I think that corporates as well as RMCs and service providers can benefit from. That's just the
Yeah.
short bit.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Get in the comments, hit that like button. I think that when I look at so many companies out here are small businesses, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the nature, besides the tax side of the business, and RMCs are big because they have a lot of turnover and capital and everything. But all the suppliers that roll up to them are all small businesses,
Yeah.
and using the set aside of 25 million or whatever, depending on your type of business you are, right? And and they just don't have the wherewithal to employ a professional proposal writer on
Yeah.
staff for the most part, right? Until you probably hit a certain number, I don't know, that's 10 million, 20 million a year, where you can
Mhm.
start to say, okay, I can go and I can get somebody that's good. I mean, it's not just about checking the box. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get a, a social media intern, or I'm going to get somebody
Right.
that's like 22 fresh out of college with an English degree like I was, right? And didn't know, which end was up. I couldn't spell
Hmm.
RMC, right? I didn't even know, I was in this business for 5 years before I knew they were called RMCs. I used to call them
Yeah.
third party relocation companies, right?
Right.
So it's like because you got to be able to really talk the talk, and you're not going to just you need a high level person, frankly, that's capable of that, and those people are really expensive. So if you're only getting three, four, five, RFPs a year, does it make sense to employ someone who's anywhere from $60 to $120,000 a year to respond to those proposals? I mean, that's a big ask,
Yeah.
especially if you're only converting. I don't know what's a proper conversion rate on these things usually, Olivia.
Yeah. It's a good question, Ben, and I think
I'm
it's hard to
horrible
say because
today.
it varies from RMC to RMC. It varies from service provider to service provider. I've seen 1 in 4
Mm-hmm.
RFPs, sometimes even less than that.
Sure.
Um, so it's hard to say. It's hard to give us one specific number, but I totally hear you what you're saying in that typically smaller service providers and even smaller RMCs, they don't have a dedicated resource to do this work, either because there isn't enough volume or they just decide to depend on their sales people, their account executives, which
Yeah.
account executives and salespeople and business development people, they have a lot of RFP knowledge. But
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go as far as saying they know how to complete an RFP from start to finish and manage
Yeah.
all of the parts in between and
Yeah.
collaborate with all the stakeholders. And like it really takes a lot of project management work to see a project from start to finish.
Is that who has to do it now? Is the salespeople? Like, are they tasked? Like, so if you don't have a proposal writer on staff and an
Yeah.
RFP comes in, I mean, is it like, hey, salesperson, hey, congratulations, you got
Yeah.
invited to the party,
Yeah.
fill it out.
If they're small enough, I actually spoke with a friend recently who told me that that's what they do right now because they
So,
don't have the resources in house to do the work, or they're not willing to make an investment in someone who can do the work, even if it's for a short period of time.
so now
So they
that's
rely on their salespeople, which,
so now that salesperson who's a highly compensated individual who has a full pipeline full of opportunities,
yeah,
who's obviously effective at getting them to the RFP stage, now has to take their focus away from selling and business development and go over here to
yeah,
writing, which may not be a core competency of
right?
theirs, right?
Yeah,
They may be a social butterfly who likes to go out and network. They may be really great with follow up and just being dogged in their pursuit.
yeah.
But as far as crafting a concise, what is it? Clear,
Clear.
concise,
So
compelling.
here's my little philosophy, the 3 C's. And this can really work in any communications or marketing or proposals. Clear, concise, compelling. Clear, concise, compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, are they going to be good at that? Now, I feel like I was fortunate because I was a salesperson. I do feel like
Mhm.
salespeople are really good at understanding their customer, what they're
Yeah.
buying, why they're buying, how they buy, and like what their key, their hot buttons are, if you will, and what the
Mhm.
value prop of your company is that really speaks to that. I feel
Yep.
like they do a really nice job of that. They may even know if their prospect likes, puppies and include a picture of a dog popping out of a moving box, things like that, right? So they're good like that. And I was fortunate because I had an English degree, so I mean, business writing,
Mhm.
expository writing, persuasive writing. These are things I've learned formally in school, right?
Mhm.
So I was somewhat adroit at that exercise, the little desktop publishing and making it look kind of
Mhm.
nice, use some high res, photos and graphics and whatnot. But yeah, it takes you away from all the other activities, and I
Yeah.
mean that's a couple week project to really put something like that together. How long does it
And
normally
not
take to put an RFP together?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't only take away their focus. It also, I think it's complicated because they may not have the expertise, the understanding. They might miss some deadlines. Like I've seen that even like, question and answer period that they'll have in their little chart of like, here's when we will accept questions, right? For clarification. They may miss that. Or they may miss their intent to bid form that they need to complete. So
I,
it
I,
really
oh my
what?
gosh, I got a story about this. I met a guy who won a major government contract for like $100 million for an island in the Pacific for Guam. For Guam.
Wow.
Okay? He won it for Guam. They were invited to bid on Hawaii as well. They never completed the RFP for Hawaii. They didn't think they were even going to win Guam. They won Guam. So they probably would have won Hawaii. The contracting person called them and said, hey, how come y'all didn't submit on Hawaii? Well, we just didn't feel like we were, and he didn't say we were going to give it to you, but he basically was like, you should have put it in.
Wow. Yeah. Yep.
And that, hundreds of millions of dollars of business. It's just mind blowing.
Yep. Fully agreed. And it's even more pertinent in those situations to have someone at the helm that knows what they're doing and can really guide the process from start to finish. Because I often talk a lot about the RFP process is a collaborative process. It's a sport. It's a team sport where you have multiple stakeholders in addition to the proposal writer or consultant who really manages, right, the process. We need to have active participants in that process to make it a success. So you need to have your salespeople, you need to have your subject matter experts, whether it is your service providers, your implementation people, your tax people, whomever it is that is involved must participate and come prepared to contribute. Because at the end of the day, it's not the proposal writer that wins the commission. Let's call it what it is, right? So sales is typically the one that wins the commission. And we are there to support them to get to the next phase, which is typically, as I said, the best and final. But to remember that it is really a collaborative project that needs to be completed with input from multiple people, not just the person who is leading the RFP process, which is typically the proposal manager.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because they're the ones that the content kind of up in their brains.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of pull that out of them.
Oh, yeah.
And then make it all make sense and make it all look good, right?
Yep.
Yeah, super interesting. I want to get to some of these other topics that we have here around trends and AI specifically, okay?
Yeah.
Get in the comments here if you guys have comments. Sarah says she didn't know I had an English degree. It took me 10 years, but I got it, Sarah. I got it, My dad, here's Dan from Tulsa. What's up, Dad? My dad said my English degree wasn't, he didn't know why I got an English degree. He said, what are you going to do with that? I said, I don't know, Dad. I'm going to write $1 million emails. Take a walk.
There you go.
Anyway, had to stick it to my dad. Anyway, let's talk about trends a little bit, though. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the trends that you're seeing right now? Just give me a few that you're seeing right now.
Just looking at my little list here that I made earlier, as I said in prep for the show, because I like to be prepared. There's a few that come to mind. One of the things that I've seen over the last year or so is that RFPs in general are typically more complex and involve more stakeholders than we've ever seen before. So the requirements are more specific. The ability to comply is more scrutinized. We have more stakeholders within the RMC and service provider network than ever before. And I think that's more common with the larger opportunities that we're seeing. So, if you've got like 5,000 moves a year or more, you'll see that RFPs are much more complex and more, they're more detailed. And you really need to pay attention to those fine details because that can really shape the way in which you go out to bid and how you respond. And then the other one also that I would like to mention is shorter timelines. So usually, in the last few years, I would see, 2 to 3 weeks of a timeline to respond to an RFP. Now we see 2 weeks and less.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the volumes are picking up.
Why do you think it is that they're giving it? Why is that compressed timeline?
I don't know if I have an answer to this. I think it can be a few different things. Mobility managers are realizing that they need to go out to bid, and they have a window that they can do it in. Others are thinking proactively, like they're thinking in advance of maybe next year. So I think there's different reasons. I don't know all of them by any means, but from what I've seen, it can be a whole host of reasons. But I just see this as an evolution of how RFPs are approached and managed and what the expectations are on ourselves as those that are leading the response management and also the people that we work with in the process. As I said, sales and subject matter experts. So those are a couple. The other two I wanted to mention is, we already talked about the character limit. That was going to be one of the things I was going to mention.
Yep.
And we're seeing a lot of questions on our usage of AI. So if you think
Yes.
back to, that whole George Floyd incident from a few years back, that really, I think, propelled a lot of DEI initiatives to come about, and for RMCs and service providers to really make some commitments and efforts to advancing their DEI and sustainability and ESG practices. That was the big theme then. Now the big theme is AI, and how are we using AI? To what extent are we using it? Are we even leveraging it? So clients are trying to understand how we are, how we see, what is our stance as it comes to AI? Are we using it in any way? Or if not, do we plan to use it to maybe help facilitate some administrative heavy tasks as part of the relocation process? Are we responding to RFPs with AI? Some questions I've seen come up that,
Oh, really?
do you use AI to generate your content in response to RFPs? I've seen that, which was quite interesting. So that is what I would say is the theme, the trend this year is like questions on AI.
Yeah. And let's talk about AI, because I think we all think that it's disrupting content creation, writing. You did a post on this recently. I thought that was really interesting. What are your thoughts about using AI to write your RFP responses?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Hey, that's what we're here for.
And it's loaded. Yeah, it's loaded because I look at this whole usage of AI as it pertains to the RFP process in a couple of different ways. You can look at it from the aspect of using proposal software that has AI features embedded already, or the one that we all know about, which is ChatGPT. So what I would say on that is, don't use ChatGPT to create a full response. What you can do, because the reason why I say that is because OpenAI, which is the founder and of ChatGPT, all of the content that you input into ChatGPT is not private, it's public. And OpenAI is using that content that people input to train their large language models. So you got to be careful not to input an RFP document and load it and say, hey, ChatGPT, answer these 10, 15 questions for me with these specific themes. Don't do that, because it's not safe and it's not secure. What you can do is, there are proposal software that exist that have generative AI features and they use your content, but it's local to your organization. It doesn't go outside of your organization. It's encrypted, it's safe, it's secure, it stays within the parameters of your organization. So there's more opportunity to use AI in a more safe way with proposal software. ChatGPT, for me, for example, I prefer to use ChatGPT to do client research, competitor research, have it pull out some interesting aspects or information that I want pertaining to a client. For example, if I'm doing, let's say, if I'm working on an executive summary for an RMC responding to an RFP, I'll use ChatGPT and put in some prompts. Tell me about client names, sustainability initiatives. Tell me about client names, five-year
So
business.
you got to use it as like a research tool almost.
As a tool, exactly. Not as a tool that it helps me respond to RFPs, but not directly, if that makes sense. It's exactly what you said. It is a tool. It's not something that I think at this point can be used. And again, not ChatGPT. There are proposal software tools that are available and teams can invest in, where you can house your own content and you use that content to respond to the questions in the RFP document.
Makes sense. I'm giving you a little banner here. Get in the comments if you got a question for Olivia Bahrami here about the RFP process or best practices or use of AI in the process. I did not know that about OpenAI. I mean, it makes perfect sense. They say if you don't have to pay for the service, then you're the product, right? So
Yep.
I guess, it
Exactly.
makes sense that they're stealing our data. I mean, I don't know why I thought that they wouldn't. I guess I'm just naive.
That's how they train their model, right? And that's how it gets better and better and better. So the more you use it, the smarter it becomes. And that's why it's really important to make sure that if you're like, don't upload client policies to ChatGPT. You're right. Don't upload RFP documents or appendices that you get from a client. Don't do that, because it's not safe. So, and I'm sure clients won't be happy about that
I was
either.
going to say, is that a violation of a privacy policy, or
100%.
things that you have to do? Let me ask you this.
Absolutely.
So one of the thoughts that came up, recently I was doing my move, right? And
Hmm.
I'm doing my move, and I'm like, man, the moving industry is these guys work so hard. It's such a great service. My wife is like addicted to full pack moves now. She can't have it any other way, okay? And I'm like, why do we have a problem selling our industry, the managed relocation, full service moving, furnished corporate housing? I mean, this is a really amazing service. Why are we having issues with it? And I'm thinking, well, the reason is because we're not using video to actually explain what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, a video on Instagram can sell me a watermelon slicer. How come I can't sell, freaking household goods, right? So my thought was, I started making these TikToks, started thinking about this, and it got me thinking, and I saw your video about use of AIs, and I'm like, what about using video? So
Yeah.
let me ask you, can video be deployed in an RFP process?
Yes, it can.
Because I always
In
think of it as a response, like on a piece of paper, like
Right,
this.
right. And a lot of times it is that way. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of Excel.
Mm,
Excel is not a word processing tool. So it limits our ability to be creative, to be innovative, and to show our solutions. So to your point about video,
yeah,
can you embed a video in Excel? Yeah. Is the presentation of it nice? No. So if
yeah,
you have the flexibility to submit a proposal response in Word and then PDF into a PDF document, that's great because you're able to show that video to clients. Or you can use it as, sometimes I see this, they'll want appendices in or exhibits in PowerPoint. You can certainly embed,
mm,
right, videos in
yeah,
PowerPoint. And video, as I mentioned to you on one of your posts, video is so powerful because the way the content is communicated is not from the company talking about their service. It's from a client. So in your case, with your move, you are actually giving a testimonial of your experience and your family's experience on the moving process
hmm,
and the movers that you engaged with. So, wow, what a powerful way to really show the value of a service through video and through a client testimonial like a video, which is, yeah, I love it. I think it's superb. It's not done sufficiently enough. And I think, again, that's partly because sometimes we just don't have that flexibility to do it in an RFP. Again, they're very specific about, here are the instructions, here's what I want you to do, here's what I want you to fill out. And sometimes they'll say, please don't include additional marketing material. So then what are you supposed to do, right? So you are a little bit at the mercy of the client. But at the same time, I wouldn't hesitate to ask as part of that question and answer period, hey, we would love to demonstrate how we can provide this service. We have several words that we would like to share with you. Would you entertain that? Would you be open to looking at them? So there's a two-way street here that the RMC and the service provider needs to take accountability for asking the right questions, and then the client needs to be a little bit flexible on that side.
what would happen if I got, how long is a typical RFP, Olivia?
You mean in terms of the questions that they
Yeah,
ask?
yeah, I have questions, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean 50 to 75, but
All
I've
right.
seen 100,
Yeah.
150, 200, 350, right? It really varies.
Shoot me. All right, 75. Let's just say you get a 75 question RFP. What would happen if I responded to every question on that RFP with a TikTok?
I will say that will be new. It'll be innovative, but you also probably will get scored very poorly. You probably won't pass did this provider answer all the questions. It probably, unless of course, okay, here's a caveat. If you know your audience, know who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with kind of like a high tech, innovative, open to different ways of working type of company, that may actually work in your favor. But if it's one of these more traditional organizations, I'm not sure that's going to fly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really curious. Jason Macias says, you will be remembered. They say,
That's
remember that
right.
idiot that we didn't hire because he responded to everything with a TikTok? Dana says, how many points get taken off the scorecard for adding it? So if they say don't add
Yeah.
additional marketing materials and say you add a video. I mean, is a video additional marketing materials if you embed it into the response document, or are they talking about other additional attachments?
It can be both. So if they welcome additional documents, whether that be a video or a white paper or a case study, then it can be viewed that way. But I think you need to understand, again, know your audience, know how you're going into it, and ask the questions to make sure that you get a full picture. Again, going back to that example of like a high tech company, maybe a company like maybe, I don't know, Shopify or Stripe, they might actually appreciate that you're innovating in such a way that you're providing content in a little bit of an unexpected, not of a traditional way. So
Yeah.
know your audience, do your research. Don't be afraid to ask questions. My whole philosophy is if you don't ask, you'll never know. And the worst that you'll hear is, oh, no, you can't. But at least you asked and you get some learning from that. So
Yeah, definitely. Super interesting. Yeah, I mean, if somebody said, they're going to send me white papers and stuff or brochures or PDFs, I'd be like, yeah, don't send me any additional. If you're going to send me some funny or quirky or has a little music in the background or something like little punchy, 15-second, 20-second video, answering my question, but showing me, not telling me, but showing me. I mean, I don't know. I take my chances. I like to stand apart. To Jason's point,
Agreed.
I'll be remembered. If you're not remembered, you won't get selected. That's for sure.
You know what? I just had a thought, Ben. Just as you were talking, maybe you can use that as part of the RFI process, request for information, where there's a little bit more flexibility. They're not scoring you on your pricing, right? It's a little bit more open-ended. They're looking to get information on who you are as an organization. So that may be an instance where you might want to try that approach and see what sort of response you get.
Yeah, I like that. See, thank you for making me not feel so weird. I'll plug it in the
Not at
RFI
all.
process. All right, Olivia, this has been a lot of fun, but you know what? We're running short on time, and I want to play a little game. You want to play a little game?
Let's
with
do
me?
it.
All right, let's have some fun here. Y'all know what time it is. It's overrated, underrated. Olivia, do you know how to play?
I think I do, but
Seems pretty intuitive.
all right, let's do it.
Let's see here. Oh gosh, we got a question. Keep the questions coming. We're gonna save them for the end. I promise I'll get to them. All right, overrated, underrated. The game goes like this. You have there's two rules. I'm gonna give you a topic. You are gonna tell me if it is either overrated or underrated. Those are your only two options. You will be scored poorly for lack of compliance if you don't adhere to the rules of the proposal process.
I already have trauma setting in from that.
and because in the nature of RFP scoring, I will tell you if you are correct or incorrect.
Got it.
It's not fair, but it's my game. Here we go. Overrated, underrated. The first one up is Ariba portal. First for the people out there who don't know, what is the Ariba portal?
Oh my gosh, Ariba portal is one of those portals that, and some of you may be familiar with this. It's an SAP-based portal that a lot of corporates use to procure the RFP process. So you're able to respond to RFP questions in Ariba. You're able to message back and forth with the client contacts. So it's essentially a portal that is used to facilitate the RFP process.
Okay, great. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Why?
It's not user-friendly, in my opinion. It can be very difficult to use. It's not very intuitive. And then sometimes the portal crashes, so your submission can be in jeopardy. That's no fun.
Suck, yeah.
So yeah, overrated.
Imagine you had a deadline and the portal crashes and you're just like,
no good.
Can I mail it to you? All right, sounds good. 1 point for Olivia. It is overrated. Next one up. Boilerplate content, but can't we just reuse the same stuff? It's the same company, same questions. Can't I just reuse it?
I know it is very tempting. It is very tempting because it's there, but it's overrated. I mean, boilerplate serves its purpose, but we need to be able to customize our offering every single time. So, overrated.
Yeah, and it's like boilerplate content to me is, it's as a human being, if I read it, I know that this was written for everybody. It wasn't written for me. I agree. Totally overrated, overly relied on, never wins. Next, hybrid work models.
This is probably a little controversial, but I think it's overrated.
Wow, overrated.
I
Why?
think so. Because hybrid models suggest that, at least in our day and time, right, the environment in which we're living right now, it suggests that it is the best. And I don't think it's the best. I think hybrid models try to indicate that one size fits all, and I don't believe that that is the case. I think what we need to have more conversations around is what's the best fit for that particular department or for that particular person. So it's not so cookie cutter. It's not so like, here's the new way of working. And I know there's a lot of, this is very popular now, so I acknowledge that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that just because it's very popular, it doesn't mean that it is the best way forward.
Yeah, I think it's like I think it's kind of like one of those like you're either in or you're out kind of things to me. Because it's like if you think being in is the best, then be in. If you think being out is the
Yeah.
best, then be out. But to be
Yeah.
like half in and half out, you're like,
Yeah.
and then what if, you say, is it by department? Is it by individual? If it's by individual, I can't collaborate with my department. If it's by department, I might have trouble collaborating interdepartmentally.
Right.
Am I getting FaceTime with the senior executive team, which is important to my career and my department's strategic importance in
Right.
the company? I mean, it's just, I mean, I know that there's flexibility, and I almost rather see just flexibility on a case by case basis to say, oh, you need to work from home because you have a contractor come by the house. Cool. You need
Yeah.
um, to do something for personal reasons, and we'll just do it kind of case by case. I think the need to have a policy instead of dealing with things on a case by case basis is actually kind of harmful.
Hmm.
Because when you write a policy, it's never going to be 100% applicable and accurate.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that quickly, Ben, I think there's also something that we don't tend to think about, but there is a little bit of inequity in that.
Hmm.
That doesn't work. So I think your point around flexibility is huge. I think we need to be flexible with the way in which we approach our working models and making sure that if the work gets done and you're able to collaborate with your teams and interdepartmentally, I think that's super important. And at the end of the day, if we have that flexibility and we're able to give people that flexibility, that's very important. It's a huge value proposition.
I think the whole if the work gets done thing too is kind of a slippery slope because what are we asking then? We're saying let me work from home, but just measure every single action I take and tell me if I've
Right.
taken enough actions, and then we get the keyboard clicker going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the mouse mover, mechanisms going. So I think we got to be careful what we're asking for, what we're reducing ourselves to
Right,
sometimes as human
right,
beings.
exactly.
Yeah. So is it overrated or underrated?
Overrated, I think.
I'm with you. Overrated. All right, man, you're on a roll here. Three in a row. Three points in a row here. All right, you're scoring very well. You may be selected on this RFP. Next one up, overrated, underrated. RFP software.
Oh, underrated. Underrated. Not enough
Tell me why.
organizations use RFP software. It is such, yes, it is an investment, but it's a good type of investment because you're able to maintain your content in one database. And yeah, you do have to invest some time into making sure that it is your single source of truth, which is what I like to call it. But it's underrated. I think we need to use more of RFP software to make sure that our RFP lifecycle is managed in a very seamless process.
How much does an RFP software cost? Like roundabout. Like just give me.
Yeah, it varies because I think it's based on a lot of them operate on licenses. So, for example, if you have an organization where you have 10 individuals that will be using the software, it might be $10,000 USD. I mean, it really depends. And if you have a big proposal operation, my gosh, you absolutely need to have RFP software because if you have multiple proposal writers working on different bids, you need to have everything centralized. And if people are working from different documents, there is going to be a lack of consistency in many, many aspects. So that's why I'm a huge fan of RFP software because it centralizes everything.
Is there a size of company where it becomes important, like more than one proposal writer, or if I'm
Uh,
a small company, do I invest in that?
Yeah, there's no hard and fast rule. I think it really is based on how many RFPs you do a year. If you do maybe five, maybe it's not worth it. But if you do more than five, or if you have multiple personnel that are working on it, then you might benefit from that. There's also salespeople that work on like DDQs, due diligence questionnaires, where sometimes proposal writers don't get involved, and they use it to respond to those questions. So
Wow.
there is a lot of value in having it. It's just determining if it's a right fit for your company.
If you are not of a size yet where you need proposal writing software, what is
Yeah.
the next step that you could take that's maybe low cost, no cost to kind
Yeah.
of do something?
Yeah, I would say SharePoint might be a good option. So creating a SharePoint and giving everybody access that will contribute to that SharePoint with different content, with updating content, having access that way, and making sure that you're using it in that perspective. And you can create different folders where you house different pieces of content. So, company information, account management team and resumes, headshots, implementation schedules and responses. So it can work that way very well, especially if you don't have the volume yet. So I would say, yeah, SharePoint would be a good alternative.
All right, I love it. Sounds good. 4 points for Olivia here. Last one up. Curveball for you. Tipping. Tipping. Overrated or underrated?
Okay. So if I'm a big coffee drinker, particularly cappuccinos and lattes, like I'm crazy about those. And I have one at least once or twice a day. If I'm going to a coffee shop, if I'm going to a local coffee shop or to a Starbucks or to a Tim Hortons, and I'm asked to tip, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
So I would say tipping is overrated in the context of a coffee shop. Now, if you go to a restaurant, totally different conversation. But to a coffee shop, if I'm just getting my cup of Joe, no, I don't want to be asked to tip for you making my latte or my cappuccino that morning.
Right. Like you couldn't literally do less. Yeah, there's like, I've seen some different indications out there. Like if I have to walk over and get it, I'm not tipping.
Or drive it.
If I have
Or
to
drive
order,
to.
somebody said if I have to order standing up, if I have to order standing up, I'm not tipping. For me, so I'm typically a 20% tipper, but I break it into 4 parts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did I have to walk up to the counter to order?
Mm.
Did I have to go get it? Did I have to bust my own table and throw out my own garbage? And was somebody asking if they could refill my drink or get me anything else at my table?
Right.
These are the
right.
4 elements to me of a full 20% tip.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that.
And then
I
when you
love
start
this
to
philosophy.
when you start to take away aspects, because there's different quick service aspects, right? You may order at a counter, but then they bring it to you, right? Okay.
Right. That's different.
You earned yourself 5% right there. Now, do I get to leave my trash on the table when I leave it, or I got to take it out? Well, then you earn yourself 5 more percent. So
exactly.
It's like you tell me where you want to be.
100%. If I'm driving to get my coffee when I drop off my daughter to school, no, I shouldn't have to tip you. I mean, I drove to your place of business to pick up my coffee.
Yeah. I didn't get out of my car. You didn't get out of your store. Let's call it even.
There you go.
I love it. Abigail says, what the heck, self-orders ask for
Oh my
tips
gosh,
now?
yes.
And it's just so people don't have to pay workers anything. That's all it is. That's what it's about. People don't want to pay people at the Timmy Hortons. People don't want to have to pay them a couple extra bucks an hour.
Exactly.
A toonie more an hour. That's all it takes, people.
Exactly.
People say I always tip 20%. Yeah, cool. Very good. We got one last question actually for you. This was a lot of fun. So you know what? I agree with you. Totally overrated. I think honestly we should just like incorporate. In a lot of countries, they just pay people good wages to work in restaurants. And you get, you have health insurance and you get, paid a decent rate. And it's not about, because tipping is also kind of, in some ways, kind of akin to graft and corruption. Because it's like, if I give you more money, I'm going to get better service. You got to buy me back a drink at the bar if you're a bartender. Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, agreed.
So I think it's interesting. But there's a really good Freakonomics podcast on this. Should tipping be banned? And it explores what happens in restaurants, because there's also a parity issue. Think about this.
Yes.
Where do the tips go? Tips go to the front of the house employees. The back of the house employees don't get tipped. The cooks and the line workers, they don't get tipped at all. And then you look at who's in the front of the house and who's in the back of the house, and what do they look like, and what are their, demographic makeups, right? And you start to
Agreed.
see
Good
there's
point. Yeah.
a lot of disparity there.
And there's
So,
an equity in that too, right? If you think about it, it's like who is privileged to potentially receive a tip and who isn't. So yeah, I fully agree with you. And
yes,
if the organization was paying the right wages to these individuals, they wouldn't feel not obligated, but wouldn't feel like they have to incorporate that tip option.
yeah. One last question here for you, Olivia.
Yeah.
Jason says, if two companies reached out to the RFP house with the same RFP, how would that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the first one that would reach out to me is the one I would work with. The second one I just wouldn't because it's a conflict of interest. And I need to make sure that I keep those lines very, very separate. So, yeah, the first one that would reach out, and if I have the capacity to take it on, I will work with the first company that reaches out to me. The other one, I will just say, sorry, it's a conflict of interest, and maybe refer them to somebody else if I know someone in the industry. And that's how I would manage that.
Nice. Makes perfect sense. Francisco says, great conversation. Hope to see this live at WERC. Cool, Francisco. We're actually going to be doing Love and Relo, 2 of them at WERC, probably Wednesday and Thursday.
Amazing.
At WERC. Yeah, so we're going to be trying to bring some of the magic to you live from
Love it.
from DC. Olivia, this has been phenomenal. I love what you're doing. I think it fills such a gap in the marketplace. I think it gives people a real opportunity to compete with some of the bigger companies out there by having a very professional presentation and proposal. Anything you want to leave, maybe as just a final thought?
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on, Ben. This has been super, super fun and insightful. It's always great opportunity to chat with you and the rest of our community. And there's this quote that I live by, and I don't know if it's super relevant in this context, but I'm going to share it anyway because I think maybe we can take away something from it. And I really live by this: is do what you feel is right, for you will be criticized anyway. In anything that you do, personally and professionally, I really live by that motto or mantra. So, as I said, so do what you feel is right in your heart, for you will be criticized anyway. There's always going to be naysayers, people that are negative or have something to say, but that shouldn't limit you. You need to do what is right for you and is within the alignment that you see for yourself go forward. So I would kind of just share those words.
Fabulous. I love that. I hadn't heard that before, but it's so true.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Olivia, this is fantastic. Olivia Bahrami here, the founder of the RFP House, and so excited to have you on and watch what you're doing out there. How can people get in touch with you, Olivia, if they're interested in your services?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. So I'm super active on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content. I welcome everybody to reach out to me, whether it's just to have a coffee chat or you want to share some ideas, or if you need any support with your RFPs, please reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to be in touch with you too. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, thanks everybody for being here today with us. We have a special Move for Hunger edition. It's Hunger Action Month. September's Hunger Action Month. So as you know, every September we celebrate Hunger Action Month with Move for Hunger and Love and Reload. This is from season 2, I think, as a fundraiser that we did. Anyway, so Thursday, Dan Grable and I think Joe Johnson are going to be on Thursday from Grable talking about sustainability. So tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. And thanks, everybody. We will catch you tomorrow.